in order to help kids right now, I almost think that it's important to help them understand the system in which they operate, which is why I ask about scaffolding to get ready to go to college. But why? Like, even knowing what the purpose of going to college is, even understanding, that the economics of the job that you're going for isn't the reason why you go for the job, right? Like, that's not why you prepare yourself to become this, that, or the other thing. I mean, if you want to go towards this job that's very, that has a large salary attached to it, so be it. But if that's what you feel called to do. So I guess the next kind of part of what I want to talk about is, like, how do we actually start to encourage young people towards going towards their calling and identifying their calling earlier, so that perhaps by the time they do find themselves going through the system that hopefully will be changing over time, they can actually be doing something closer to what they would love to do, and which would make them a better servant to humanity.
One of the questions we ask is, do you see yourself as someone who wants to change society, or who will work towards changing society, improving it? And I've never had a student say to me that no, they don't want to. They always say that they do want to. Then usually immediately after they say, but I don't really know how I can do it. So this implies that there's an awareness, there's a capability, but an understanding that some training and development has to happen. So to me, that's the beginning of trying to connect meaning of what I can do, what I want to become. And I may not know the answers to those questions, but by being willing to try to make some difference, then often our calling or our idea of what we'd like to do starts to develop, and then through some experience it might be furthered, or maybe we become aware of that not being what it is, and then we look further. But I think we need to start helping young people connect meaning to education, and to see that they're going to eventually, through a process, it's going to become clear what they might feel moved by, what they might feel that they want to contribute to. And I think the biggest compliment in education that could be paid is if a student's able to say, I understand why we're learning what we're learning. It makes sense and it connects. I think there's too much fragmentation or alienation from the learning experience versus our life, and those things really shouldn't be that way. But it really is about conversation and trying to discover what's inside.
Everyone who's involved in the conversation surrounding education and the systems that we develop and the policies develop around it, how does the conversation come together?
I think that there's a few big issues with educators. One of them are often the circumstances that they're educating in aren't very conducive to learning. I remember one of my daughters at the end of grade 9 said she wanted to quit school. And I was surprised because she was involved in leadership things, and she seemed to be well adjusted, and I asked her why, and she said, well, I can't talk about sex, drugs, alcohol, and backbiting for the next 4 years, and that's all that's being talked about. And the teachers don't want to teach, and the students don't want to learn, and I don't know who to blame for that. And I thought, well, okay, that doesn't sound like those two statements were enough to kind of jar me into thinking, okay, something has to be done here, because if that's the assessment, and this idea of students not wanting to learn and teachers not wanting to teach makes you realize that that's a pretty paralyzing environment. And I think she was being genuine when she said, that the teachers didn't quite know how to deal with that either, and the students didn't. So there's this kind of dichotomy between the participants in education. And so I've kind of made that very much a thing that I don't want to see in our school. And really, everyone here is building something that's going to result in the success of everyone here. It's going to be, but we can't dichotomize between the teachers and the students. We have to really see that we're all working together in a process to bring out the capacities and abilities of everyone. And that certainly the teachers can't be the ones that can control this environment or take ownership of this environment. It has to be everybody that does that. So when we have a problem in the school, we take it to everybody. We don't expect that the teachers will solve it, but it's amazing to see when everyone applies the capacity of problem solving to the issues of their environment, we can solve these problems. And there's tremendous energy and capacity in youth to do this. But if we can't create the conditions in which everybody feels that they're empowered to take a part of this and make this contribution, then it's difficult.